I think I just found my most favorite twig mic holder ever. Recently, one of you asked me a very thoughtful question. So, Asta writes, Hey, I have been repeatedly told that you can heal with love. Love is the highest frequency, and we should give the world love. But I see this pattern of overgiving, being the kind one, the sacrificing one. I did it, but over time I felt used and empty. If I don't be this love, this kindness, if I choose myself too, will I still be able to heal? Hi, it's me, your internet auntie. And in this video, we'll go over the most common myths surrounding love, how it trips us up and leaves us feeling empty and used, and how we can practice a more sovereign form of love. A kind of love that fills us up and connects us instead of draining us. And I've got a little gift for you towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. We've all heard the saying, charity begins at home. I didn't really understand what that meant for the longest time, but I spent many hours talking to my shampoo bottles about it in the shower, and it finally dawned on me that it goes so much deeper than I originally thought. How can I truly love other people if I don't know what it feels like to love myself? And what does love even look like? We all say the words, oh, self love, you need to love yourself, I love myself. What does that mean? What does that look like? If love is a verb, a doing word, shouldn't I show up for myself in a loving way every day before I assume that I know how to show love to other people? Now, regardless of what some of you might think of some of his politics, Dr. Jordan Peterson did make an excellent point in his book, 12 Rules for Life. And one of the chapters says, you should treat yourself like someone you're responsible for taking care of. I have never stopped thinking about that, and it has become one of my top rules for life. So, one of the myths, love heals everything, and so I must give and give and give and give. We're taught that love is the highest frequency, that healing comes from being endlessly kind, endlessly understanding, endlessly forgiving, endlessly self sacrificing. We are socialized to believe that being loving means giving love without boundaries and without concern for ourselves. We're taught that having boundaries around love makes us mean, cold hearted, and selfish. And so you stay on the phone for hours with someone listening to all their problems long after you've felt exhausted by the emotional weight of it and you've developed a headache, being the emotional caretaker for everyone because love heals. Crossing oceans for someone who wouldn't cross a puddle for you. Love doesn't heal if it's built on a foundation of self abandonment. If your version of love requires you to neglect your own needs, ignore your own inner compass, that's not love. That's a trauma response disguised as empathy. And if we are consistently abandoning our own needs to please others, are we treating ourselves with love? If I ask someone to neglect their needs for me, that would be quite cruel, no? But when you neglect yourself, that's love somehow? No. It's still an act of cruelty, it's just directed inwards. The hidden cost of being the loving one, being the endlessly kind, endlessly forgiving, endlessly self sacrificing one, slowly breeds resentment, burnout, and eventually contempt. This will bubble up as passive aggression, condescension, gossip, or self righteousness. There's an awful lot of that going around. When we neglect our own needs and boundaries, we actually lower our serotonin levels because we are literally telling our bodies, my needs aren't important, my boundaries aren't important. I am fundamentally not important. And this can lead to depression and chronic anxiety over time. Now, I used to pride myself on being a good listener. I was always there for people, quietly listening to their problems without ever asking for anything in return. I thought it made me empathetic, evolved, enlightened. But secretly, I felt drained, exhausted, unseen, and quietly angry that no one looked after me the way I looked after them. But you try to justify it to yourself. You justify the imbalance by saying, oh, well, I'm a healer. My higher self is calling me to heal the world through unconditional love. And you're just more enlightened than they are, and it's your job to awaken them with love and understanding. But this is just a noble story we tell ourselves in order to cope with the cognitive dissonance of self neglect. Love that empties you will turn into bitterness. The body keeps the score, even when you try to smile through the pain. And your own unmet needs and unacknowledged boundaries slowly erode your sense of self over time. And the quiet anger of your unmet needs will bubble up in ugly, insidious ways. Overgiving isn't love, it's a survival strategy. Overgiving doesn't come from love, it comes from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and fear of not being seen as a good person. So you babysit for your friend multiple times a week so they can get a break. And that's a lovely thing to do for them. It's a lovely way to build a village around you and to show your love through acts of service. But if you do this despite knowing that if you ever need a favor in return, this is not the friend who's going to be there for you. And it's not because of the baby. They were like that from the beginning. This is just your relationship. You know they're not going to be there for you when you need them. But you don't want to say no because you're worried you'll lose their friendship, that they'll abandon you, that they'll gossip about you behind your back. You're worried that saying no makes you a bad friend to a woman who's just had a baby. And yet, over time, the friendship sours despite all your generosity because you naturally become resentful of this one sided relationship. You're not a robot, you're a social mammal. It's okay to have your own needs and your own emotions. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't give our friends some grace and understanding when they're going through massive changes in their lives, especially things like chronic illness or just giving birth. And the first year or two of having a baby is absolutely massive. It's never going to be 50-50 during those times. That's fine. I'm not saying we abandon our friends because, oh, you can't give me a 50-50 relationship anymore. No, that's ridiculous. It only becomes an issue when this is just how the friendship always has been. It's not about the baby, it's not about the chronic illness. They're just always like this. So, overgiving isn't generosity, it's an unhealthy form of attachment. You're trying to feel good enough through usefulness. And when your sense of self worth and value is based on how useful you are to another person, you get used. Now, self sacrifice feels spiritual, but it isn't. And this is why. Spiritual language often glamorizes the very real suffering of chronically unmet needs. We label it as an ego death, unconditional love, transcending the self. And yet, all of this is just a clever form of mental gymnastics so we can justify the very real pain of being neglected. So you ignore your own needs because you think you're being evolved, enlightened, or heart centered. Well, there's nothing enlightened about bypassing your own nervous system and your natural instincts. Your instincts are there to protect you. I have a video up on Patreon for free members all about instinct, a deep dive into instinct, what they are, what they actually look like, how and why we end up suppressing our instincts, and how you can reconnect with your instincts. So grab your journal and a cheeky glass of wine and click on the link below when you finish this video. Giving without expectation versus giving to be chosen. We often give with hidden contracts. I'll support you, and if I support you enough, loyally enough, if I'm good enough, if I'm useful enough, if I'm enough of a servant to you, then eventually you'll see me, you'll notice me, you'll value me, you'll love me. If you need something back, it's not generosity. It's a hidden contract. It's not fair on the other person and it's not fair on you. They feel a breach of trust because they believe you were just acting out of generosity, out of an overflow, an abundance of your own internal love. And you feel betrayed because they didn't live up to the expectations that you secretly placed on them. Now, I'm aware that this can sound contradictory to what I said earlier about reciprocal friendships, give and take relationships, but it's not contradictory because it's not black and white, it's nuanced. And at the end of this video, there's a segment on sovereign love, which ties everything together and gives you a broader, nuanced framework for all of this. So, for example, I used to sit and listen to absolutely anyone, I mean, complete strangers at the dog park, anyone who wanted to trauma dump onto me. I would listen obediently for literally hours. Long after I had developed a migraine and blurry vision, I would still sit through it because I thought to myself, they need this from me. They need a good listener. I'll be that good listener for them. I told myself I was being a kind person, be the change you want to see in the world and all that sort of thing. They clearly needed someone to talk to, and I thought I was happy to provide for their needs. But the hidden contract they had stepped into was that I wanted to be heard as well. I wanted to feel seen. I was the silent, invisible child. I lived in my own little world with Mr. Tumnus the fawn and all the other talking animals of Narnia. I was generally shy. I read books. I made mud pies and ate them. And all I wanted to do was talk about all the different breeds of horses I'd been researching and what all the different patterns on their coats are called. And no one really had the time or interest or patience to just sit and listen to me. So I became that good listener that I had always needed. But over time, my unmet needs turned to resentment. So give only what you can give freely. Know your limits and walk away when you reach them. I'm still a good listener to this day, and many people are drawn to me for that reason. But I no longer give out of obligation. I recently had a work colleague ask how I was. Literally 4.5 seconds into a sentence, he cut me off to start complaining about how his car still isn't working. And I just looked him up and down, very confused. Why ask someone how they are if you're not going to listen to even 4.5 seconds of their answer? I looked him up and down and just walked out of the room. I walked out, he was still talking to himself. And as I walked away, he said under his breath, yeah, walk away then. And I did. And I felt so good about it. And as I was walking away, and I heard him say that under his breath, and I thought, all I had playing in my head, because old me would have been riddled with guilt for literally like 10 months for doing something like that. But new me, new year, new me, I just had this soundtrack playing in my head, and I said to myself, I'm not available for one-sided conversations. I'm not available for this bait and switch dynamic where someone baits you with, oh, hey, how are you going? But it's a bait and switch. It's just to then hijack the conversation. I mean, they clearly don't care about how you are, etc., etc. I'm not available for these bait and switch conversation dynamics. I'm not available for guilt tripping. I'm not available for one-sided emotional caretaking. And as I thought these thoughts, and I'm walking away, my shoulders just naturally went back into a more relaxed state. My head went a little bit higher. And I felt this massive wave of peace and self-respect wash over me as I thought, yeah, that's my boundary. I don't have to explain it, and I don't have to feel bad about it. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because the next day I saw him, I thought I was expecting him to be taciturn and prickly. And to my surprise, The first thing he said when I walked in, "Oh, hey, how's it going? How's your head cold?" Because I was very sick for about 2 weeks. He goes, "How's your head cold? Are you feeling any better?" I said, "Oh yeah, no, not really feeling so great. Hasn't made much difference." And he said, "Oh, that's a real shame. Oh, here, I got you a little bottle of gin." He got me a little bottle of gin. I'm not much of a gin drinker, but it's a thought that counts. I thought that was so sweet. He's like, "This is really good stuff. This'll put you right." I was like, "Oh, thank you. That's lovely." And he jokingly referred to it as medicine, which is very cute. And then later on in the shift, he showed me, because I'd been using this horrible like blue sort of paper towel, to because I got the sniffles, and using that like 467 times a day was just ripping the skin off my little nostrils. It was horrible. My whole nose was bright red. And he showed me these, sort of fancy napkin things, little paper napkins. He's like, "Oh, try these, use these instead. These are a lot softer. They're a lot nicer. When I've got a head cold, I always use these ones." I was like, "Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you." And then I said, "And how's your car going? How's everything with your car going? Is that getting sorted out now?" Two-way, two-way conversation. I made it very clear I am not available for bait and switch. I'm not available for one-sided conversations. And what do you know? He decided, whether unconsciously or consciously, okay, fair enough. And he switched up. Now, are we ever going to be best friends? I doubt it. But that's life. He's just a work colleague. I just like to be able to get on with him and have a bit of a nice chat. That's all you need, isn't it? That's interesting. You teach people how to treat you. You teach people what kind of relationship that you're open to having with them. And if you don't feel that you're worthy of love, you will settle for feeling useful. Now, many of you are already becoming aware of unhealthy relationship dynamics, but this next point is so insidious that you might not be aware of it just yet. That is how we sometimes reject love to impress people with our independence. Well, sometimes the reason we feel burnt out in relationships and friendships isn't because we're surrounded by self absorbed people. Emotional vampires are a very small but very annoying percentage of the population. Most people want reciprocal two-way relationships. That's what feels good. That's what feels healthy. The vast majority of us are biologically wired up to coexist in symbiotic relationships, two-way street relationships, reciprocal relationships. This is how we evolved as social mammals, as tribal animals. It's only natural for us to be pro-social. But you can unconsciously disrupt this natural symbiosis if you are uncomfortable with receiving. You might be uncomfortable with asking to have your needs met if you feel that your needs are annoying, stupid, inconvenient, or wrong. But most people will be more than happy to help if you just give them the opportunity. So when you repeatedly reject someone's offer, it could be the smallest thing, just taking you to the mechanic, taking you up the road for something when your car breaks down. When you repeatedly reject someone's offer for reciprocity, and you say, "Oh, no, no, I've got it. Oh, no, don't worry about it. I'll fix it. Oh, no, I'll do it. Oh, no, don't you worry about that." Repeatedly rejecting them, you think you're being low maintenance, but what you're actually doing is denying them the joy of giving back. You think about how much joy you get from giving to people. You're denying them that joy. How is that loving? Nah, I got you with that one, didn't I? For someone who isn't parasitic, that dynamic where it's so one sided, it's going to be uncomfortable for them because they naturally want to give back to you and you are rejecting them from being able to give back. And someone who isn't parasitic, it's going to be so uncomfortable for them that they will naturally just step back because it's too awkward. And then you'll feel like, oh, I did everything for them and I never asked for anything in return, and they abandoned me anyway. So if this is triggering you, good. I'm glad. You might benefit from having a think about why you struggle to receive. And this is one of my biggest struggles. That's why I understand it so intimately. Receiving requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires a kind of emotional courage to be seen struggling, to be seen not having it all together, to be seen imperfectly trying to juggle too many responsibilities. It's so windy. I can see the camera literally shaking. I hope it's not windy in the microphone. Let me try and cover it up a bit for you. You're admitting to the other person that you can't quite do it on your own. Whoa. Right, we're going to have to do the rest of the video like this. So by allowing the other person to step in a bit, not to take over 100% of all your problems and your worries and your responsibility, but just to carry a small burden, just a tiny, tiny weight off your shoulders. And then maybe this other friend can carry a tiny little weight off your shoulders, and another friend. And before you know it, a problem shared is a problem halved, and you all do this for each other. People admire us for our strengths, but connect with us through our vulnerability. Boundaries are the container that allows love to thrive. We often make the mistake of thinking that boundaries block love, that they cheapen it or weaken it in some way. But the complete opposite is actually true. Making these videos is a labor of love for me. I know there's no fancy editing or fancy backdrops or anything, but the amount of time for each video, even the ones that are just 10 minutes long, the amount of time spent writing, rewriting, rewriting, filming, editing, wrestling with my ego and its need for perfection. All of that takes up a lot of time out of my week. And I do it because I love making them. But that boundary that I have there is I'm never going to make videos to try and stick to a certain schedule and get the video out at any cost, at the cost of my health, at the cost of absolute exhaustion. I mean, I've been very sick for the last 2 weeks. I don't know if you can still hear it in my voice. I'm a little tiny bit nasal still, but I could barely breathe. I wasn't sleeping properly at night. These little nostrils don't get much oxygen in on the best of days, let alone when I've got a cold. So, yeah, and yet I heard this inner critic coming up. I was just conscious of it, listening to it. Inner critic came up and it was saying, "Oh, you're so lazy. You can't stick to anything. You can't be consistent with anything. Look at you lying here in bed with your Lemsip. It's been nearly 2 weeks since you uploaded." But I didn't allow those thoughts to take root out of love for myself, respect for my need for rest. Boundaries don't block love, they make it sustainable. Without boundaries, love becomes a resource that we provide out of obligation, instead of a gift you choose to offer because your own cup overflows. Before we move on to the final chapter on sovereign love, you can use the code Instinct50 to get 50% off your first month on Patreon. I just finished the 30-day transformation. It's called Survival to Sovereignty, and in it there is one journaling prompt per day. Don't overwhelm yourself and do them all at once, you crackhead. Stop that. One prompt per day. I'm watching you. Oh no. One prompt per day, and really sit with it. Talk to your shampoo bottles about it. They're very wise. They know what they're doing. And if you're still not sure, you can get a 7-day free trial. So you lose nothing. If you download it and you're like, wow, this is absolute garbage, well, you didn't lose anything, did you? Apart from precious hours of your life that you can't get back. All right, final section, sovereign love, the only kind of love that actually heals. We confuse love with martyrdom. We say, I'll stay, I'll endure, I'll forgive, I'll understand it all endlessly. But sovereign love says, I love you, I value our relationship, and I will always give to you whenever I can without neglecting myself. But if it comes to choosing between us, I will choose myself, and I expect you to do the same. Don't sacrifice your own needs for my sake. Mutual love and support should not result in overwhelm and exhaustion. I won't hold your hand through every tiny little bump in the road because I respect you too much as a sovereign, sentient being who is capable of working their own shit out. During difficult times, I will carry a small weight for you, and you'll do the same for me. You be my safety, and I'll be yours. And in saying that, I don't want any of you to sign up for Patreon if it means stretching your own budget. Don't do it. I'm just as happy having you sign up as a free member or just commenting here on YouTube. It's lovely to have you around. And this year, I have some tricksy little plans up my sleeve. I want to start a Discord server, among other things, so we can all share our journaling prompts and build a little community, a little pack, so to speak. But if you do have the capacity, you can use the code Instinct50 to get 50% off your first month. And I'll see you next time.